Welcome to the Reaction Radar. A senator claims he was tackled for asking a question, but the footage show a different story. So, what are they not telling us? Without any further ado, let's jump right into this.
By Senator Alex Padilla. Senator, thank you so much for joining us live on MSNBC. First question, how are you? We all watched the video. We saw you taken to the floor by those agents. How are you doing?
Yeah, look, I'm okay. I've been on the phone off and on with kids, right? Because my kids, travels fast in this day and age with technology to make sure they're okay. But I think most importantly is the outrage that I hope people feel. If this can happen to a United States senator for having the audacity to ask a question.
First of all, Senator, let's get this right. It's 2025. There's cameras everywhere. It's baffling that the public official still believe their actions won't be seen or scrutinized storming into a press conference while holding a public office. That's not professionalism. That's theater. Come on, seriously?
Of the Secretary of Homeland Security, the same questions for and requests for information that we've had, not just the last sort of week or so, the activity in Los Angeles, but since the beginning of the administration, then just imagine what can happen to anybody in the country, for that matter.
We heard from you briefly at the press conference after you came outside of the federal building in Westwood. We've heard more extensively from Secretary Noem and the Department of Homeland Security, and I want to just tell you a little bit, because I'm sure this has been a whirlwind, about what they've been saying. Secretary Noem said that you, quote, lunged towards her at this press conference. The Department of Homeland Security said the Secret Service believed that you were an attacker, and the Department of Homeland Security called this political theater. What's your response, and what's your version of what happened?
Well, first of all, that's ridiculous. It's a lie, but par for the course for this administration, right? So here's the stage. Look, I was in...
Here's the stage. Apparently we are on a public theater.
The federal building here in Los Angeles for a scheduled briefing. Just as when my colleagues and I had to go all the way to Guantanamo Bay to begin to get information about that facility being used as a detention facility, they've been non-responsive to requests for information. And so I had scheduled, they approved a briefing with representatives of the Northern Command in that federal building. We were there prior to the 10:30 original appointment date when we caught wind that Secretary of Homeland Security is going to be down the hall.
So you caught wind that the Department of Homeland Secretary is going to be there. You didn't ask for an invite. You just caught wind.
At a press conference. And our briefing was now delayed because of that press conference. So since the secretary has been non-responsive, I figured let me go over and listen to what she has to say. Maybe we can glean some information here.
So let me make sure I understand that.
The whole time, right? We're the whole time being escorted in this federal building by somebody from the National Guard, somebody from the FBI. I've gone through screening. This is a federal building. And so...
Here it is, folks. Here it's coming. Grab your popcorns and your choice of drink, because here comes the BS. He's setting it up now. It's everybody else's fault but their own action that they took. He's being escorted now. So you're a grown man and everybody's supposed to control what you do and you don't do. Got you, sir.
Let's go listen to the press conference. They escort me over to that room. And I'm sitting in the back of the room behind the cameras, behind the reporters, listening. And at one point, it was just too much to take. Not the first, but the second attack on the political leadership of California and this notion that Donald Trump and Kristi Noem had to come in and rescue the people of Los Angeles.
So it became too much for you to take. Being a public figure means controlling your emotions. Disagreement isn't a pass to throw a temper tantrum. If you disagree with what's being said, especially as a senator, there are diplomatic channels on how to address it. You know?
From Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass, it was too much. And so I spoke up. I introduced myself and said I had a question. Look, they said I wasn't wearing my pin.
Hey, whenever Superman rips open that shirt and exposes chest, better pay attention. All I'm saying, okay? That's all I'm saying.
Polo says United States Senate.
Now, I want you to think about this for a minute. Escalation breaks out Officers are worried about what's going on. People are worried about what's going on. Who's going to be looking at a little sign on your shirt? Do you not have like a badge, a ID that you're supposed to be wearing? You're a congressman. I know sometimes they have to have special lapels and stuff that will be recognized. You don't have any of that. Who's to say that shirt could be made up from anywhere and anyone? They don't know who you are.
There was no threat. There was no lunging. I raised my voice to ask a question, and
Raised your voice to ask a question. Now, I want you guys to listen and think about this. In a few minutes, you're going to have to pay attention to body language. Okay. What was the last time you were in somewhere where you just calmly said, "Hey, can I have a number 2?" versus, "Hey, where's my food at?" That right there would make people like, "Oh my God, what's going on?" versus, "Hey, where's my food? Can I have a fork?" No one cares. No one pays attention to you. But the minute you're like, "Hey, where's my fork at?" Now everybody stop what they're doing. They're, "Oh my God, what is going on here?" And you're going to see that reaction. Now I want you to draw your own conclusion. Okay.
it took maybe half a second before multiple agents were on me.
The video clearly
Again, why would agents just run up if you were calmly asking questions? It amazes me that these politicians are lying and they're on camera lying. Okay. And then they claim victimhood, but
shows, and you can hear on the audio, that you identify yourself as Senator Padilla. She said you barged into the room, or you basically broke into the room. I'm paraphrasing here. Just set the record straight on that.
Yeah, I didn't barge into the room. As I mentioned, I was in a different conference room, a couple doors down the hall. I let it be known I'd like to go listen to the press conference. The folks that were escorting me in the building walked me over. I didn't even open the door. The door was open for me.
you see that? So it's everybody else's fault but your own now, right? So in retrospect to what you're saying, now let me see if I understand this and see if you guys are still with me on this, okay? If I'm walking down the street and I have a couple of friends with me, right? We happen to go by a certain house. Now, my friends open that door. I don't live there. My friends don't live there, but they just open this door and I walk into this place. It's not our house. It's not my house. It's not my friend's house. So does that mean that I'm no longer responsible for breaking and entering, nor is my friends are, because they're the ones that opened the door, but I was let in legally? Come on, man. Make this make sense, sir. Make this make sense.
And I spent a few minutes in the back of the room just listening in until the political rhetoric got to be too much to take. So I spoke up.
Have you seen the video yet? Well, you can look here, Senator. Have you actually watched it yourself? When you watch this, and let's go through this together. Describe to me what you're seeing. What's happening here?
Yeah, again, multiple people forcibly removing from the room. I know I was trying.
Pay attention. You saw the video. He's saying multiple people removed him from the room, but did you see his body language? Did you see him trying to barge through the officers? So that's why it took a couple of them to get him out of there. They don't know who he is and what threat he possesses or what's going on at that point in time.
Trying to do two things at once, try to get my question out while trying not to lose my balance. They first asked me to, get down on my knees. Like growing up where I grew up from.
Stand by. Drum roll, please. Here comes the fear mongering, the icing on the cake. Are y'all ready for this? Listen.
Where I grew up, you know what happens if you don't obey law enforcement.
No, I don't know what happens and where you grew up from. Because myself, I never grew up in the United States of America. I became a citizen. But guess what? It doesn't matter where I grow up from. Right is right, wrong is wrong. If the law says to do something, I will comply. Unless they're giving you an unethical objective. Okay? Unless the officer says, "Hey, I need you to go on top of this building and jump off of it." Why? You can cause harm to yourself. Unless the officer said, "Hey, go lay on a train track while a train is coming." Why? That will put myself in harm's way. But if they're like, "Sir, stop. Please remove, go outside." What's unethical about that? What? And you're lying so much, folks. I need y'all to think about this. He is in fear of officers, but you're acting the way you're acting and you're a congressperson? See, that's where the fear mongering comes in again. Fear mongering isn't governance, right? You had every chance to leave calmly when asked. Instead, you decided not to. You resisted and you turned this into a routine, a moment of viral spectacle, right? If you were scared of the officers, you wouldn't have showed up and did what you did while pushing past them. Let's be honest. You shouted, you disrupted, you created chaos, not because you were confused, but because you didn't like what was being said. And is that a role of a politician to be playing? That's not public servants. That's performance. You deserve an award for this, sir.
And so I began to go on my knees to the extent that they would let me, because they were literally handling me at the same time. And it went from getting on your knees to flat on the floor, which I tried but wasn't able to eat.
Look at that. Do you think that looks like somebody that was fearful? They're trying to get him out of the room. He's pushing back. So yeah, it's
Easily because of the
Look at
folks
that. Look at that.
handling me. They put handcuffs on me. So yes, I was handcuffed.
These are FBI agents. Did they tell you who they were?
They wouldn't identify themselves, and I kept repeatedly asking themselves, why am I being detained?
You're Congress. You don't know what those badges are? You're around them every day. Come on, folks. Listen, I expect the average John Doe like you and I to not understand what all these badges and these people mean. These people are lying and fear-mongering to you. They're with the CIA, the FBI, Capitol Police. They know what they work with these people day in and day out. How do you not know what their badge dot look like? Come on. Come on, folks. Wake up. Don't let them pull the wool over your eyes. Do not. Wake up. Inform and engage.
No answer. Why am I being detained? No answer. Why am I being detained?
Now, let me ask you that. Here it is, a congressman wants to know, why am I being detained? Why am I being detained? Why are they answering me? Why am I being detained? Well, sir, let's see. You go into a press conference, right? And forgive my limited understanding, sir. I'm just a simple, average, run-of-the-mill John Doe citizen. I'm not a politician and have all the degrees and everything you need to be a politician, right? Let's see. There were other people in that room. They didn't get charged with anything, right? And there were actually press people there, other people there, law enforcement there, but nobody got charged or kicked out of that room. And why that was? That's because, let me go out here on a limb and say, you were being charged with disorderly conduct, sir. Why are you being charged? Why else? You were yelling, acting a fool, and turning up. What do you expect? You're acting out in front of cameras and then crying foul, and it's irresponsible. It's not a strategy. It's irresponsibility. So what were the authorities supposed to do? Ignore the fact that someone was acting irrational on live TV and interrupting official business? Come on.
No answer. Then they get me back up on my feet, and we start walking. Don't tell me where we're going.
You were handcuffed at this point.
Absolutely. Am I being led back outside? I don't know. Am I being taken to a cell? I don't know. They were not communicative.
Well, you wouldn't have to worry about that, right? Had you acted like a civilized person, then you wouldn't have to worry about where you're being taken. Nobody else there was taken out and wondering where they're going.
Until somebody from, I'm sure, Secretary Noem's team figured out I was who I said I was, and finally said, let him go.
So they let you go. They took the handcuffs off. What happened next? There were reports that you met with Secretary Noem for 15 minutes after the press conference was over.
So this is a little surreal. So they took the handcuffs off. The person that came over said, well, if you'd like to meet with the secretary, you can do so after the press conference is over. Sure. I've been done.
See that? Diplomatic. And that's all he had to do. Folks, don't let these people pull a fast one over you and pull wool over your eyes. Think, be informed, and engage. They're all under one time or another. They're all going to the same meetings. They're working on the same office. They don't have their email. They don't have a phone number. They're going to say, oh, we've been calling. They're not responding. I'm probably going to go out on a limb here and say that that's a lie. That's a lie. Because why? If you send an email, that's a paper trail. Somebody's going to be accountable for it, right? But again, if you don't know about these things, right? Anything they say, you're like, oh my God, that is so true. That's like the other piece that I did with MacGyver yesterday when she was getting all people routed up. Rah, 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 rah. When we leave, you need to call Congress. Why? You're Congress and you're right there in front of the people. So why should the people have to wait till you leave to contact them? You're right there. You see, but it's all about title, right? They want to be like, oh, your entitlement, your privilege, but you're the ones that's trying to push this privilege thing on with yourself. Being a government isn't a free pass. Just because someone holds an office, that doesn't mean that they're above basic rules of conduct. And if you didn't know appointments were required, guess what? You're required to do so. Because again, you're a public servant, but could myself or any other, citizen just walk into your office without an appointment or letting you know or things like that? No. So if it's not good for us, why is it good for you? Because you're working for Congress? Come on.
Dying to get information from the department for months. I'll take this opportunity and see what I can glean. Then I was asked, but the other briefing that you're here for, the previously scheduled briefing, would you still like that briefing? Of course, that's why we came. That one never happened because the representatives from Northern Command left. Again.
Yeah, and I don't blame them because they probably just saw how you acted on live TV and they're like, we're not meeting with this guy. And why should they?
Didn't give us an excuse, so hoped for another opportunity to learn from them. Like, again.
And why should they? They probably just saw how you were acting, so.
What's the mission of the National Guard here? What training have what's normally state National Guard is now federalized National Guard service women and men, if they're going to be out in communities, if they're going to be interfacing with civilians? This is not a normal job for them. And by the way, they're being taken away from other critical missions in the state of California to do this function.
Misunderstanding the military's role is alarming. National Guard and Marines are deployed to restore order. That's not a function. That's the military and National Guard are being deployed to restore order. That's not controversial. That's their function. You're in Congress. How do you not know that? If you don't know that, should you be legislating? Should you? Asking a question like that is like asking this one, right? There's no manuals for toilet paper, but you figured that out. Likewise, leadership requires common sense. The chaos you stated demanded action. Military presence is a logical, lawful response, not a conspiracy.
Function. Now we hear the Marines are coming. For what purpose? What's the mission? What type of training preparation have?
What's the mission? Really?
They had.
Did you get answers to any of these questions?
None. And so, again, did have an opportunity to sit with the Secretary Noem for a few minutes. You think she might have started the meeting with an apology of what happened. Of course not. And so I began to ask the question I was trying to ask in the press conference. For all the touting of the Trump administration of going after violent criminals, you were doing, there would be no debate, there would be no discussion. But what's happening in reality is far different than that, because we hear story after story after story of non-violent migrants who, many are working in very essential jobs for our economy, being rounded up, right? The cruelty with which they're doing this, the increased cruelty with which they're doing this, escalating here in Los Angeles over the course of the last week. You don't need flashbangs, when you're trying to target one person. National Guard over, not.
So once again, legislator, I'm not sure, again, how certain individuals are elected into office. Because again, if you're a legislator, you should know the Constitution is not a buffet menu. You don't get to selectively apply rights based on how they suit your narrative. That's not patriotism. That's manipulation. Flashbangs and crowd control is not tyranny. The outrage over standard procedure shows the lack of understanding about public safety. Again, alarming for someone who's in office. It's extremely alarming. But these are basic common sense things you should know. You're a legislator. Come on. Come on.
At the request of a governor, it hasn't happened since 1965.
Here we go with this nonsense again. This is the same thing Hillary got on X and she was talking about, oh, this has not happened since 60 years ago. I don't know where they're getting this information from, but it speaks a lot about their party. Do your research. Or are you guys just recycling talking points? You know, it hadn't been 60 years. It has not. And let me explain something to you, sir. Do you know who Governor Pete Wilson is? I'm waiting. No? Okay. So he was the governor for California in 1992. 1992, there was an LA riot. From 1992 to 2025, that's been 33 years. Not 60 years, 33 years. And you're saying this has never happened since 60 years ago had a governor declared and called. Guess what? He called in the National Guard to assist with the riots. Again, something you should know. But, you know, when these things have been happening or your bills and laws being passed or these things have been discussed, maybe you're one of the ones sleeping back there so you don't know what's going on. And if you can't handle simple math or get a timeline right, how can anyone trust you to vote on real policies? And this is real talk. What's going on here?
And so, of course, they're instigating, trying to create the response and a reaction from community, and will point to anything to further escalate the situation. It's wrong and it's counterproductive.
Senator Padilla, we're here on my colleague Ari Melber's program, The Beat on MSNBC, and I know Ari wants to ask you a question.
Are we going to stop here? Because this is way too much more idiotic stuff than I care to really focus on right now. Because the lies at least come out and make your lie make sense. You know what I mean? Like, just don't be like abracadabra and then we're seeing all the magic tricks that you're doing. You know? But I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. What do you guys think? So if a sitting senator can act out like this and then cry victim, what does that say about the accountability for Washington, D.C.? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd really love to hear what you got to say. Remember, like, subscribe, and share. Stay informed and engage. And until we meet again, keep your radars locked in right here. Have a good one.